Hey, I'm Charlotte.
And I'm Rich.
And we felt that there were probably 10 questions or barriers or hurdles that are preventing some of you from stepping into the online space and sharing evangelistic content.
And so we've approached 10 guests to come on each podcast to explain to us how they managed to get over the hurdles themselves and to give us their wisdom.
So we hope you can join us and learn something from our expert panel, from our wisdom here at CV, and hopefully some of our conversation. So in this next episode, we are going to be unpacking how do we keep up to date with tech that's constantly changing. So at CV, I know it's something that we're always doing. We're always innovating. We're always pioneering. So CV originally started off in like radio, then it quickly pivoted to social media and was an early adopter of that. And now we've been quite quick and early adopters of kind of future tech as well, which some stuff I'll touch on later. But it's just really exciting to see how we have just this opportunity of a mission field in such a broad way that maybe some people have never considered.
Yeah. And I think it is constantly changing. That's the kind of hurdle.
Yeah.
And hands up, I'm overwhelmed in this space. And I'm overwhelmed because, you know, there's always something that I've not heard of, and there's always a tool or a platform or something that I'm not on. And that overwhelming feeling for me can be paralyzing. It's been paralyzing, which is, why do I even bother? And,
totally.
you know, you only need to go on to post something on Instagram to think, what are all these buttons?
Yeah.
Like,
and there's literally a new one being released every day. And you're like, oh my goodness.
Yeah. And I think it can be overwhelming with all
Yeah.
this tech. I think the good side of the constantly changing tech is the people who make this tech realize that it'll only work if people use it. And they've dumbed down the usability. And let's take ChatGPT, for example. I showed it to my mum a couple of weeks ago, and my mum's in her 70s. And the thing she loved the most is there was only one box for her to write in.
Nice.
And that was like, I could use this. And she started using it to write, you know, she's writing letters to complain about a mobile phone bill and why it's not right. And she said, it's amazing.
That's so cool.
But these companies have got much better over the years at making sure that if they're going to put tech in the hands of people, it's going to need to be usable. And I think as I've journeyed into doing a little bit more digital content, I've realized that if they just put a bit of YouTube video tutorial training in for some more of the things that are a little bit more complex, it's actually not hugely difficult. It just requires time.
Yeah, and totally, it's just that time to sit and figure out how some of this stuff works, and hopefully we can unpack a little bit that today. So I met with a lady called Janet Sewell. So Janet actually works at the Lausanne movement. She's part of their global and national teams. She's actually from Iceland originally. She met her husband, Iranian husband, in Greece while on mission, and now lives in London. So quite a journey for her. But Janet recently completed her thesis, a master's thesis on missiology and virtual reality.
Oh, come on.
So she was a great person to just go, right, okay, Janet, how do we keep up to date with all this? What's going on? So the very first thing she actually unpacked for us was a little bit about her thesis, about the opportunity for virtual reality and us reaching people. So let's hear what she had to say.
So people enter into virtual reality because they're looking for relationships. Some people go in to just explore, but people go in looking for community. And so actually what I did as I was exploring this, I jumped into a virtual world and just started walking around and bumped into a couple of people. And they started asking me questions, and turned out that they were from India and they just wanted to practice their English. And so they were literally just in there wanting to engage in conversation and practice their English, which is an amazing opportunity to share the gospel with somebody from India who actually wants to engage with you and find out more about Western cultures, Western society, and Christianity potentially. Another thing that virtual reality churches are seeing in VR is that, right, when you want to go to church, you have to make a conscious decision, right? I'm going to church, I'm putting on my shoes, I'm going out, I'm taking my car, the bus, the tube, and I'm traveling 20 minutes, half an hour to get to church, and then I have to walk through the doors to get into church. Within virtual reality, if you put on your headset And then you're faced with a menu of things that you can do in virtual reality right at that moment. And on Sundays, you've got a ton of churches that you can choose from. And so they can literally go, right. Okay, this looks interesting. Click, they're there. So it lowers the threshold in so many different ways because there's not that distance, that space. It can happen instantaneously where you're just part of a church. And so what pastors in virtual reality are finding is that atheists, people that are not Christians, are coming to church and just saying, like, you know what, I'm just exploring. Not quite sure if I believe in all of this stuff, but yeah, just curious. And what they are finding also, like, because one of the big questions I get is, yeah, but you're not seeing the real person. You're seeing an avatar. An avatar is an image, a digital representation of the person behind them. But with this anonymity, so because you don't see this person, you don't know their names unless they choose to reveal that. And that brings a certain anonymity to it. And this anonymity actually breeds authenticity because they're not afraid of losing face. They're not afraid of, oh, what is this person going to think about me or anything like that. They can just blurt out whatever they want. And so within minutes, these pastors are getting into deep spiritual conversations with people just saying, I just got diagnosed with cancer, or my mom got diagnosed with cancer, or I struggle with porn, or I struggle with, drugs or whatever it is. And people are opening up in a way that they wouldn't in a real life setting. When you walk into a room and you're faced with another person, you're not necessarily going to reveal all your deepest, darkest secrets, but with an avatar that you can then change, or that you, and within a virtual reality world where you never have to see this person again, it's kind of like the safety of the stranger syndrome. So you walk in and you can tell a stranger anything you want because you will never see that person again. They don't know any of your friends. They don't know anything about you, and you'll never see that person again. So you can talk about anything you want. And so within virtual reality, you have a bit of that element there. And pastors are actually blown away by what is happening within virtual reality and just evangelism there. Another really cool thing is that they're giving these headsets to the older generation who is stuck at home. So they have a lifetime of experiences, a wealth of experience and time, because they're just sitting at home. And instead of just watching TV, they now put on their glasses, their virtual reality goggles, press a button, and now they're talking with young people from all over the world. And so we have an army of people potentially sitting at home on their couches that we can arm and just show them how to use this new technology. And there are examples of people doing evangelism, doing discipleship, mentoring young people from across the world from their living rooms and never having to go anywhere. So yeah, the potential within virtual reality is quite big, actually.
Yeah, Janet's insights are really kind of mind-blowing for me, because I find this kind of discussion, which she's talking about things that are really like, I don't own a headset. I'm not a gamer. I don't have a video console. Do you even call them that now? I don't know.
We're a bit old.
We're a bit old, but I don't have one. And my kids aren't at the age where they're wanting one either. I'm sure they'd want one now, but that we've given them one. And so the idea and the concepts that are thrown at you when you hear these things, for me, is, again, a kind of like, well, is this even right? I'm a little bit more like, I read a paper Bible and I go to a physical church. Yet, if I look back through my life, actually, I listen to a lot of digital content. I create my own digital content and I consume a lot of it. And even, I think the statistic in the UK is 55% of the population in the UK game for fun.
Wow.
Over 37 million people would game for fun in terms of like have a console, and that would be part of what they do. And they could only, we'd only know what the statistics would be of how many of them are really deep into it. And she's gone kind of really deep into this technology of where you can put headsets on. And I've had to realize is that even though I don't understand it, even though it doesn't light me up, even though it's not the way that I would engage in community conversation, 55% of the population.
Big opportunity.
And there's this huge opportunity out there. And it would be foolish of me to ignore that because I don't understand it. And I think this is maybe the tension that we're in the world at the moment, which is not many do understand it. And so does that mean that we have to ignore it? And I think there is a responsibility for those who, like CV, who are leading the way in how we're going to go and understand this market. We're going to go out and find out things, and then we're going to digest it and serve it up to ministry leaders, to churches, to individuals who want to go out and proclaim the gospel, and we're going to help you get into these spaces. And so I think it's really exciting that of the world that we're in. I think what she's just described, I'm like, that sounds amazing. I don't want to put a headset on and go to church, but I could only imagine that there are millions of people that are, there obviously are, they're actually doing it and are exploring it.
I think, it just presents a different opportunity for us to think of not just the virtual reality space, but there's a lot of other creative digital spaces, platforms where we can engage people. So I know at CV we've used bots. So people come through a video and then they click on the bot and then they're able to answer questions and explore Jesus through the answers in those questions. We've even created a chat GPT bot where people can asked questions, and obviously certain ethics and parameters we're still figuring out and building around that, but just the opportunity is another place for people to explore Jesus. We've had WhatsApp groups, we've had broadcast groups, all sorts of different ways and methods. And I often talk about the donkey, it's the mode of transport to get the message of Jesus to these people. We've got so many more opportunities with AI to even further extend this reach. I know a new project from CV has been called the Undark, and it's only just kind of being released, and it's all around this Discord community and NFTs and all of that kind of world. But again, it's another space that people congregate to meet them at, so just like we used to meet people on the streets, now we can meet people in all of these different places and tell them about the good news of Jesus, which is really exciting. I read a really great quote by, I think I say his name right, Mo Gaudat, and he said, "Embrace the power of AI to extend your reach and connect with others in ways previously unimaginable.
Wow.
Adapt to its possibilities, and you'll not only keep pace with the future, but you'll help to shape it." I mean, what an opportunity right now if we can jump into these AI tools, begin to understand them. And we haven't got a deep dive into every area. It could be just one that you pick and you find your niche, you find your focus. Maybe it's somewhere already that you are, like a gaming space or something, and you can find that space and really talk to people about Jesus.
Yeah, really special, and especially that we're on the precipice really of what this could turn into, a precipice of hundreds of thousands, millions of people coming to know the good news of Jesus, because information can travel faster than it's ever traveled before. And, in these spaces that we just talked about, I think it's really special. I'm really excited.
The next question then I kind of wanted to unpack with Janet was around, can this really be a place where we can really actually build true connections with people? Because that's a big question we're asked all the time.
Great.
I know a certain pastor that has asked me this question to depth many times. It's like, I just want to meet people in person. But actually, Janet comes with some really great ideas and thoughts around this in her work.
There is one thing that I really wanted to touch on. It's within the whole virtual reality realm. Just kind of realizing, I think one of the big aha moments that I see when I tell people that just because the church is virtual or we're looking at virtual relationships doesn't mean that they're any less real. And the question that I get also a lot is, yes, but don't you need to be physically present in order to do church well? And yes, absolutely, there is. However, there's also the element of the fact that, we have the New Testament today due to absence. Out of the 26 books in the New Testament, John and Mark and Matthew are were actually books written. Luke was written as a letter. Acts was written as a letter. Even Revelation was written to the 7 churches, right? So practically all of the New Testament as we have it today is due to absence. The early church was not together, and they were writing letters, and Paul was discipling, Paul was teaching, Paul was even doing church discipline, all of this from a distance. Why can't we use that same mindset or that same idea for virtual reality churches and even just churches in online? Paul said, absolutely, like I long to be with you physically. I long to see you. However, he was still teaching and discipling at a distance using letters. He was using the technology of the day to minister to the churches around, well, that he was talking to, whether they were in modern day Turkey, modern day Greece, modern day Italy. Using that and thinking about it in that sense kind of gives us a theological permission to do church in virtual reality. And another thing is that the smartphone has actually changed what we mean by presence. I can be in a coffee shop and physically present to the person next to me. But if I'm texting my husband, I'm actually more present with my husband texting than I am with the person that I am physically next to in the coffee shop. So our whole concept of presence has changed due to technology. So again, can we not be afraid of using the technology because we're saying that somehow not being able to touch the person or to hug the person, as valuable as that is, I am not putting that down by any means, but it doesn't mean that we cannot use or that we should not use virtual tools, whether it's virtual reality, whether it's Zoom, whatever it is, to communicate and to create and build communities. Because like I said before, young people are in virtual reality. Young people are online. They're building community online. And it's innate, like they're doing it without even trying. They're just playing games, having fun, and they're getting to know each other. Community is being built online. And as pastors and churches, we need to get on board with that and not say that because it's not physical, because it's not in real life, it is somehow less than, and we shouldn't do it. I would argue that Paul and the apostles, they were discipling from a distance. They were using the tools of the day to reach the churches across the Mediterranean basin. And in today's day and age, the internet is our Roman road system, as it were. And they were able to do all of this because of the Roman road system. And this is kind of a new paradigm that we've entered into within the digital realm and with the internet. And we need to use it to share the gospel as much as we humanly possibly can.
What a gift Janet is to all of us, really, to be able to unpack the thinking around this. And I love what she said there, which is the idea that the church was not always present and wasn't always gathered. And that is what we have with this like disparate community of digital natives, which is what they're now called. They're very familiar with the digital field. And so to put a headset on, to jump and comment online and to allow that to journey people is really special. When she was speaking, I was reminded that Nicodemus came to Jesus at night, and he came in darkness to explore. And I think that there's something around that, which is the anonymity, which he talked about, which is the ability to be able to go into a space and not have to kind of fully repent and come to a point. I think there's something safe about being able to, I want to explore and I want to ask questions, and I'm okay to do that, as Nicodemus did, because of what was his reputation was at stake, his whole kind of who he was, and he wanted to explore undercover in essence. And I think there's something really special that there are people, and we know that, you know, meeting physically is a good thing, right? And I think she explained that well enough there. And I think there's this either or that we've been in. Well, which one is it? It's either that or it's this. And I think we need to understand in this world, it's both and, is that it can be both. We can meet physically, and that is really good. And we can meet digitally, and we don't have to either or it. We can both and it, and we can go at a pace that is suitable, that works for the communities that we're in or works for where we're at, but we don't need to either or it. And I think the expertise that she's got and where she's at is enabling us to go, so let's do both and. What CV's doing allows us to say, well, we can do both and not either or it.
I think it just really reinforces to me that the digital space just presents so many opportunities to reach people we've never been able to reach before, in ways we've never been able to reach before. And I think, it's that until all have heard the message of the good news. I think it gives us this opportunity to be able to do this in ways. So at CV, we're now able to speak. So our team covers Western Europe. So we've got languages within Western Europe that no one in our team can speak. But due to the powers of AI, we're now able to speak some of those languages, get that content on the internet to reach those people that we wouldn't be able to otherwise reach. And that really excites me. And also at our first digital day, so we run a digital day, which is really around showing people about the opportunities of online and talking about some of the things around, the ethical considerations and all that kind of stuff. And at the first one, we had a guy called DJ Soto. I think that's how you say his name. But he runs like a metaverse church. Wow. And some of his stories. So at first I was a bit unsure, like many others, like how can this work? Like Janet's unpacked about the VR church. And I was like, can this really work? Is it a valid place to really make disciples? But he was talking about people that he would never have been able to engage with when he had a physical church. So people who have got like full anxiety where they can't leave their house, people who have got in wheelchairs and all these kind of things. And he talked about how he baptized this one person, and as they came up out of the water, and don't ask me how he did it, I don't know, but it was in the virtual reality world, and whether it's still valid, and it's one of those questions.
That's for someone else's 10-part series podcast.
Yeah, on theology. But it was just, and he talked about how this person came up out the water in tears, and he said, because in the physical world, I would never have been able to baptize because I'm in a wheelchair. And it just offers us a different possibility to explore and consider and understand our theology about, but also just not ruling it straight out, but actually having that opportunity to think, right, I'm going to give this a bit of brain space to think, is this a place I can genuinely reach people? And I just one quick quote I did read was from the Talking Jesus data research, and it said 5% of people came to faith from seeing something online.
Wow.
I mean, even if it's 5%, even if it was 1%, people came to Christ through seeing something online.
It's really special. I was talking to a friend of mine a couple of weeks ago, and she's a Muslim girl, and she's a devout Muslim. So she'd finished Ramadan. She was talking to me about what it meant to her. She was talking about her family's practices, just being really open. And she was asking me about what my faith was. And so it was just a really healthy conversation. And at the end of it, she said, I know this sounds really strange. She says, but I've started listening to gospel music. And she's like, I've started listening to it. I don't know why. I just really, really like it. And I was like, left that conversation thinking, one, I don't know what gospel music she's listening to. Two, I sent her a Spotify playlist that me and my wife have put together that we like listening to. But
you've used that as an evangelistic tool.
Yeah.
And I bet you never would have thought Spotify could be that. Yeah.
And what I left with thinking is someone went and digitally created music, right? And put it into a recording studio, mastered it down, put it onto these Roman roads that she's talked about, Spotify, wherever else she's picking it up. And they don't know that there's this Muslim girl, for some reason, who loves listening to gospel music. And it's her Nicodemus way of going, I don't know what it is. It's a little bit like, this isn't what I'd normally do, but I'm really interested in it. And so this 5% of people, I'm sure it's 5%. I'm sure the statistics are way more if you started looking at like those stories of people who are starting on the Engel scale, the famous Engel scale of just entering in. And we don't know where these digital roads are nudging people towards, be it a VR headset, be it, this world that this person's created that you talked about. I think it's really special.
Yeah, it's great. And the next thing I kind of really wanted to find out from Janet was really around so our question was around how do we keep up to date with all these digital tools and stuff. So I kind of went back to Janet and was like, so your husband's a pastor, amongst other things. How do pastors, given time constraints and everything, really explore the opportunities of AI?
I have to do a whole new church plant in virtual reality now. Like it just feels like way too much. For me, I would actually encourage them and challenge them to engage the young people in their church, because the young people know exactly, they don't have to do the research. They're living it. They're doing it. I bet you that half of the kids in your congregation are on TikTok. I personally have never been on TikTok, so putting it out there. But half of the kids today have TikTok accounts, if not more. The same thing, like some of the young people are in virtual reality, some aren't. So look at the young people in your church and actually engage them, talk with them. Young people today, so I'm a huge proponent of cross-generational discipleship. Here's a little caveat to this whole conversation where young people don't believe that the older generation has time for them, and the older generation doesn't believe that they are relevant to the younger generation. And so the two generations aren't really talking. But there is a desire and actually a craving on both sides to have that interaction. Could technology be the place where we do engage cross-cultural, cross-generationally? So the pastors, go to your youth group and find out where are buy pizza, have them come over to church on Friday evening, buy a whole bunch of pizza and just pepper them with questions. Just say, right, what tools are you using? How do you think church can engage more online? All of it, get them to give you the answers. Don't go out and try to figure it out on your own. You never will. Not because I don't believe in you, but more because we don't have time. But 40% of young people right now are gaming online, and they're spending over 3 to 4 hours a week online, in community online, playing games, all of these kinds of things. If we could take those 3-4 hours and them, instead of playing games, helping them, even equipping them to plant churches online, to do ministry, to encourage them, say, I would like to disciple you to do evangelism online where you're hanging out with your friends. There's an incredible example of a young boy. He was 11 years old at the time. He was playing hours on end on Roblox online and was making all of these friends. And he says, well, I actually would like to share the gospel with some of my friends on Roblox. Started sharing the gospel. In the end, he had a church where he was pastoring a whole bunch of his friends, an 11-year-old child, right? This is preteen. This is not even a teenager we're talking about. And within a few years, he had about 15,000 young people from 50 different nations in his church as an 18-year-old. So this is about 6-7 years later. Today, I think this is about a 10-year-old story from now, right now. So, but right now there's over 54,000 young people in this church, and they say we are a church run by youth for youth, or something like that. I think that's incredible. This shows that young people are interested in church. They're just not necessarily interested in our traditional church models. So can we, in some way, shape, or form, not disregard what we've done for the past 2,000 years? Absolutely not. I'm not advocating for that. But can we do a both and? Can we encourage the young people in our youth groups to actually go out and, as they're playing games and as they're doing their activities online, encourage them, disciple them, teach them how to do evangelism?
I mean, she ended brilliantly about trust. And I think this space is, when it comes to leading people in this space or leading yourself in this space, there's a lot of trust, right? There's trust involved, taking younger people and trusting that the gospel can go out and trusting that they're going to carry it well. And I think that is going to be a great sign to young people when we can help them and say, hey, we're trusting you. You know, if you're on at midnight and you're gaming, that we can help you out and pastor you through what that might look like. I'm also, aware that when I've put digital content out there, what I'm also really surprised at is the comment section, and that when people are asking questions, it doesn't mean that I have to answer them. They're asking me, but then I notice that people I've never met in the world somewhere, I don't even know where they live.
Conversation.
Yeah, they jump in and they answer and they help. And there's this whole space and the ability, I mean, that Roblox story that she gave is really special because, tens of thousands of people involved in a church that's run by a young person. That's really, really special of what's going on. Now, what we know in that is that their outworking of their faith is going to at some point put them into physical spaces for lots of them. I know there's a minority who might not be able to, who might be bedbound or might not be able to get out into physical spaces. But we sometimes, I think, out of fear, we're trying to communicate to people, but we got to meet physically. And there's a fear that's driving it. But I always think if the gospel does its work in someone, they're going to read the same Bible that Charlotte reads, that Rich reads, And the same Holy Spirit is going to spur them on, that they might carry on digitally doing stuff, but they're also going to walk and get a coffee. And if they're reading the same Bible that I'm reading, they're going to love on the person who's serving them a coffee. They're going to love on their schoolmates when they have to physically sit in a class. They're going to share the gospel. And so the kind of both and doesn't need stressing. You need to make sure that you're also
every Sunday. Yeah.
Because
which is important, but obviously, like you say, sometimes it's not possible.
No, but it's going to happen because they're going to read the same Bible that I read.
Yeah.
And they're going to go out and they're going to want to go into the digital space as well as the physical space. And so I think pastors, leaders, ministry leaders that maybe don't understand or are overwhelmed by the digital opportunities that are out there, out of the fear that they don't understand it, can often stress, well, we need to make sure, and they don't understand it, rather than just go, I don't understand it, but I'm going to trust you, I'm going to release you, I'm going to lean in and learn, and both and will come about, and from that we're going to see amazing things.
I think I heard someone recently say that by the time my kids are grown up, there'll be no differentiation really between the online and digital space and physical space, because for them it's just life. Like, they didn't have to start with like dial-up internet or anything like that we were like, oh, this is a new thing. Like, for them, it will just be everyday life, and they'll probably have real virtual reality that they're walking in those days or something. So who knows? But I think, and also I'd love to know the conversations that young boy's had with his family about evangelism and sharing his faith and just seeing the opportunities. And I love how the Holy Spirit's worked through him. In the same way about how Janet talked about getting young people and just saying to them, tell us, what are you doing? Where are you hanging out? And all that kind of just trying to extrapolate from them that knowledge of spaces where they could be sharing faith. Also at CV, one of the guys in my team, Josh, recently was just playing around with AI. He was the first one to pull out chat GPT and have a play with it. And he was like, you want to see this? It's really cool. But he loves having a bit of a play with stuff. And he was the one that came to us and said, do you know there's a possibility here we can have a custom GPT bot where people can ask free text questions and we can feed in some sources of like valid Christian, websites, Bible plans, those kind of things. We're still refining it, still something we're working on around some of those parameters and the hallucinations and all these kind of keywords around AI. But for him to have that opportunity to play and see what was an opportunity, we would never have known that was possible. So, harnessing people like a Josh in your youth group or your young adults group, and just saying to them, hey guys, what have you been playing with? Is there any way we could use some of these tools? You'd be surprised what some of them come out with.
Yeah, and they're geniuses in the same way. Building ministry, we've always looked for, someone who could be a great speaker or someone who could play an instrument really well. We're now just bolting on to the ministry world into reaching people. Well, we now need these people with these skills, and we've got to go help find them, and we've got to learn how to cultivate that. And for many people who've led church, they understand that they might not be musical or they might not be able to play an instrument, but they understand the value of someone bringing worship and doing it in a skillful way. And I think the better and more comfortable we can become in learning how to find those people and learning how to harness their gift, the easier reaching people in the digital space is going to be. And I kind of finish with this, which would be, I think for people who don't understand it, it's okay to say, I don't understand it. Yeah. And to not have to try be the expert in the field that you're good at, the digital field. For me, I am not an expert digitally, but I'm trying to put more digital content out there. And what I've done is I've put around myself people who are experts, people who are way further on than me in knowing what it should be. And randomly, I get texts from people, oh, you should check out this new thing that's come out on AI. It splices all your video clips up and it does this. So even recently for my show notes that I put for my podcasts, it's taken me hours, right? It's taken me ages to write a little line, and I'm awful. One, I'm dyslexic, and two, I don't value show notes because I never read them. I just press play. But there is a community out there who read these show notes.
Yeah.
So someone said, oh, you don't need to do it. You just put it into this program, and within 5 seconds,
hallelujah,
all my time codes are brought to me. I just copy paste and change a few words or whatever. And I'm like, oh, that saved me so much time, and it helps the community that do want to miss the introduction, check the time codes out, that whole world out there. And so I think like understanding and going, I know what I do well, and I need people around me who can like the amazing lady we've interviewed there, whether she can be part of a team of people, whether I read her stuff or follow her, you start to collect people who can help you reach people in the digital space.
I think that's really great that you've just wrapped up then with a few ideas of, that there are all these other possibilities of how to help you with your show notes and things that, there's all these new AI tools and features that are out there for people to keep up to date with. And I know kind of this conversation's gone on a slight different tangent to how we'd originally, thought it was going to go, but we've learned so much about it being a potential mission field. But I think going back to the original question around how do we keep up to date with all that tech, because there is so much coming out, I think just maybe setting aside a little bit of time regularly, or just leaning into someone in your team, your congregation, in your network, and just saying, hey, can you just give me a little highlight here and there about what we can learn? Yeah. But also at CV, we've got a Facebook community, we've got a few other things going on where we want to show you how to harness some of these potential AI tools to reach people. So, check out the work we're doing, keep up to date with us on socials and on our website, and you'll learn as much as we can. We're ready, as we're sharing it, so that you can implement that and take that forward. So I hope this conversation has helped people to understand the possibilities of AI and those tools, but also how we can keep up to date with the tech that's constantly changing.